Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are finishing up the book Kennedy and Trump, just wrapping up this short series, only 20 shows. This may be the last one. May be able to make it through one more. We will see how far we can get because we are discussing the book once again, Kennedy and Trump by Greg Fernandez Jr. That's me. And audio sounds good. Let's let's continue on. Reading on, we are on the conclusion right now, so we are just about at the end here. Reading on the conclusion, page 148, page 149 of the PDF. All right, the spiritual revival. Jesus is Lord of our hearts. Agree? Yes. And he's also the Lord of our marriages and the Lord of our churches. Jesus is Lord of education. Jesus is Lord of Congress and the White House. Jesus is Lord of all of heaven and all of earth. In short, Jesus is simply Lord. No exceptions. That's from Kirk Cameron. We are in the midst of a spiritual revival. And remember, this was written before the tragedy of Charlie Kirk, but that spiritual revival that I believe Kirk Cameron's talking about here, Charlie Kirk has been able to take that to the next level in his death. How many people can do that? We have been beaten down for so long. The nightmare is coming to an end. The dark winter is warming up. We can see the red sun rising over the ocean and shining through the clouds. I knew we would get here one day. I never expected it to feel this good. Enjoy this moment. Make it last. This is all temporary. God promises us a new heaven and a new earth. This is not our home. But while we are here, let's do something great. Things that were great before can be great again. Our faith can drive us to move mountains if we believe it can be done. Through Jesus Christ, all things are possible and nothing is impossible. This is our chance. This is our moment. What will we do? MAGA, Maha. How do these two movements bring us closer to God? If Christ is the center, the foundation, the rock of a movement, then the movement is already victorious. I have no doubt that Kennedy and Trump both believe in Jesus Christ. This may sound strange to some who don't know me and to some who think they know me, but I am not interested in politics or politicians. That may seem like a strange thing to say, since Kennedy and Trump are two of my favorite people to follow. Kirk Cameron would be the first. But I'd liked them long before they were quote unquote politicians. I will continue to support them after their political careers are over. I've always loved Kennedy's views on real environmentalism, and I've known about Trump since he hosted WrestleMania 4 and 5. I gave Trump a chance in 2016 because I'm a lifelong wrestling fan, but he won me over with his debating skills. Here was a politician who didn't talk like one. Trump was a Republican who was vocal about the idiocracy of the Iraq War. I hadn't seen that since Ron Paul. I didn't care if Trump was running as a Democrat or a Republican. Trump was an outsider, a businessman, and one of the greatest debaters of all time. In 2016, he dismantled both Bush and Clinton in debates. Jeb Bush was a watered down version of his brother, and Hillary was a stereotypical out of touch politician. If you count Bush Sr. as vice president, we've had a Bush and Clinton living in the White House for over 28 years, starting in 1981. Then came Barack Obama, who was George W. Bush 2.0, and a bastard child of Team Clinton. Then, alongside Obama, was someone who had been a U.S. Senator since 1973, Joe Biden. The country was ready for a change. We wanted something different. We needed to take a chance at making America great again. That couldn't happen with the same old tired Clinton versus Bush agenda. The Clintons were the blue brand version of the Bush family, two wings of the same ugly bird. I believe that was the game plan for 2016 for the 26 I believe that was the game plan for the 2016 presidential election. Some believe Trump was the chosen one to win in 2016. I disagree. I think he ruined the plans of the New World Order, and for that, he had to be punished for life. America thrived for 4 years under President Trump's leadership. I became a first time homeowner during his first term, specifically in the summer of COVID-19 2020. Under some of the worst possible circumstances, reduced to working part-time with a very young child in a small living space, God was merciful. I expected Trump to easily win in 2020. There is no doubt in my mind the 2020 presidential election was stolen from Trump. Sometimes God must take things away for us to see how good we had it. Well, at least we got 4 good years, I thought to myself. Then came the long, dark winter of Joe Biden. Though I believe America could survive another 4 years of Biden and Harris, I felt we learned our lesson. We deserved a second chance. I did some self-reflection in 2020 and 2023. I needed to refocus my worldview. Jesus always has been and always will be the center of my life, but there were times where I didn't act like it. I needed to get more spiritual with my political views. At the same time, Kirk Cameron was doing a great job of fighting the spiritual war in the physical world. Kirk Cameron reminded me what the real problem was. Drag queens are not the problem, Cameron said during a church speech. China is not the problem. The WHO is not the problem. The CDC, the WEF, Bill Gates, Soros, Silicon Valley rulers are not the problem. And by the way, they are nothing compared to the ancient Egyptians, to the Babylonians, to the Medes and Persians, to the Roman Empire, to the heathen Viking armies, to those in ancient times. During the pagan periods where they would create idols made of iron, heat them up with fire, and then sacrifice their newborn babies up into their hot arms as they fried and flipped around like bacon. They would create wicker structures in the shape of a man and fill them with criminals and Christians and set them on fire. They would throw men and women and children to be eaten by lions and beasts. They would crucify them and light them on fire, using them as torches in coliseums to light up the game to entertain the people. Here in America, we haven't seen anything yet, but God told us not to fear them. The problem is the devil, and that is not something we can handle alone. Be strong in the Lord. Be brave. Jesus saves. That's good stuff. I feel like I missed an end quote here somewhere. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. I want to make sure. Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Kirk Cameron supports 4 years of MAGA. Maybe I'm getting greedy. God gives an inch and I want a mile. It wasn't enough to be content with both Kennedy and Trump running for president of the United States at the same time. I wanted Kennedy and Trump on the same team. And in August of 2024, it happened. Then I wanted them to finish the job of President John F. Kennedy began. Then I wanted them to finish the job President John F. Kennedy began. That wheel is in motion. Then I wanted Kennedy to lead a health revolution or health restoration in this country. That is also happening. Then I got greedy. Wouldn't it be great if President Trump could find a role for Kirk Cameron and his administration? Perhaps some type of faith-based cabinet or advisory position. That may happen. If John Voight, Mel Gibson, and Sylvester Stallone can be named ambassadors to Hollywood, why can't Kirk Cameron be tapped for a similar faith-based role? Well, for now, I'm content to see Kirk Cameron and President Trump in the same building, both receiving awards. I hope they met backstage at the Fox Nation Patriot Awards ceremony on December 5th, 2024, when Kirk Cameron received the Patriot of the Year award. In his acceptance speech, Cameron reminded us we have the power to shape the future of our nation through Jesus Christ. In order to shape the future, said Cameron, we have to get to the hearts and minds of our children and to the grandchildren. We don't need a new world order. We are living through the dawn of a new era. This is a new day. This is the beginning of the restoration to save our nation, our people, and our planet from the new world order. We know the devil will reign one day, but that day does not have to be today. We can still fight. We can still pray. We can still be brave and spread the word of God. We still have our Bibles. I believe that God has given us a new day, Cameron continued. There is a spirit of hope and optimism that is in the air. We can see the future more clearly now. Kirk Cameron clearly understands how bad things were under the Biden administration. In his speech, Cameron talked about how the last 4 years have been a perfect window into the future we could have taken. As a nation, I believe we really dodged a bullet. Cameron ended his speech with a question. What if the present cultural setback was really a divine setup for a spiritual comeback led by the family of faith? I really hope Kirk Cameron and President Trump exchanged pleasantries backstage that night. I'm also glad Cameron had some positive words for Trump. I'm so thankful for President Donald Trump and his God-given tenacity and strength. He has more no-quit than anyone else I have ever seen. Perhaps President Trump will find a place for Kirk Cameron in his administration. Seeds were planted that night, but it's all up to God. This was a big win for my fellow Christians and future believers. The world needs more men like Kirk Cameron. He is a stable man of God. Even as a child star, he did not give in to the temptations offered by Hollywood culture. When we think about what happens to young famous actors, we often forget there are some who went on to be strong Christian men and women. Kirk is one of those. Mr. Cameron is a truth warrior, a brave cultural warrior, but more importantly, he is a believer in Jesus Christ. On his television show Takeaways, Kirk Cameron recently related the attempted assassination on Ronald Reagan to President Trump. Both incidents brought the presidents closer to God. Both narrowly escaped death. Cameron recalled President Reagan saying it was as if God had shot him to wake him up so that he would understand why God put him there in the White House. And essentially, President-elect Trump is saying the same thing. He's saying, I know why God saved me. Trump was very close to losing his life that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, but so was America. We dodged a bullet collectively as a nation, said Cameron, and narrowly escaped 50 years of Marxism and socialism in America. And I can turn around now and say, thank you, God. Thank you for this. This is like a great movie where things seem like they're going bad. And then it turns out that these are all the plot points that make the heroic ending so exciting. Kirk Cameron recently wrote about Trump's re-election win and the bullet we all dodged. I was blown away by God's lavish display of mercy and kindness towards our families and nation on election night, wrote Cameron. Trump dodged a bullet, but so did we as a nation. We narrowly escaped a deadly Marxist future. So many of you upheld your responsibility to vote on election day and fight the good fight every other day, and God responded. Kirk Cameron predicts the next 4 years will be 4 of the greatest of our lives to work together to influence and reshape America for the good and the godly. Get ready, brothers and sisters. I believe all heaven is about to break loose. The light of providence is shining on us. The wind is at our backs and momentum is with us. Eyes are open and ears are hearing. Now is the time for us to humble ourselves, turn from wicked ways, and get to work running the plays in our national playbook, the Bible, diligently applying its essential principles to our families, schools, churches, communities, and government. My hopeful view of the future is gaining momentum. Cameron's email message ended with scripture, 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. The end of the JFK files. The world needs a lot of healing. America needs to heal from losing a great American on November 22nd, 1963. The United States of America was wounded on that day, as President Kennedy was brutally murdered and the truth about his assassination was covered up. Those who tried to expose what really happened that day and why President Kennedy was killed were ridiculed, censored, harassed, locked up in insane asylums like Richard K. Snagel, and some were even murdered. To begin to heal this nation, all of the files related to President Kennedy's death need to be released. In 2024, President Trump defended his decision to not release all the documents during his first term. This was something he promised to do while running for president in 2016. I released a lot, Trump explained. When it came to the whole thing, I was hit by some people that worked for me that are great people that you would respect, and they asked me not to do it. Trump asked those unnamed people why he shouldn't release all of the files and was told it needs a little more time. And I released a lot, but I said, if they feel so strongly, I respect the people. Trump did as he was asked, and he does not regret that decision. That was in 2017. In 2024, President Trump said things would be different, but I didn't believe him. I'm sure I'm not the only one. This time, I'm just going to do it, Trump told Fox News hosts. Well, fool me once, shame on me. Thankfully, I never believed he would release any JFK files, so my expectations were low. They're even lower this time around. I told myself I'd be pleasantly surprised if Trump released any new JFK files if he won re-election. I'd even settle for Trump talking about whatever it was he read in those files that was so damning. There was something Trump told Judge Anthony Napolitano 2 weeks before his first term ended that needs to be explored further. During that conversation, Judge Napolitano reminded President Trump, "You made a promise to the public many times and to me privately that you haven't kept." What? Trump responded. "I'll take care of it right now." "You promised you would release the records of the JFK assassination," said Napolitano. According to Napolitano, Trump told him, "Judge, if they showed you what they showed me, you wouldn't have released it either." I said, "Who's they and what did they show you?" asked Napolitano. "Judge, someday when we're on the phone and there aren't 15 people listening to the phone call, I'll tell you." Later, Napolitano relayed the story on his television show, Judging Freedom. Who are they? Napolitano wondered. Probably somebody in the intelligence community. What did they show him? JFK's brains blown out? The topic of JFK came up during a Fox News interview with Trump in 2024. The topic of JFK came up during a Fox News interview with Trump in 2024. One of the hosts brought up RFK Jr.'s view on his uncle's assassination. RFK says the CIA killed his uncle. The host then asked Trump if he agreed with Kennedy. "I think CIA was probably behind it," Trump casually answered. It wasn't a big revelation to most JFK researchers, but it was confirmation that Trump had seen evidence of an inside job. Still, that can't be the big news Trump wouldn't share with Judge Napolitano. Napolitano asked the right question. Who is they, and what did they show President Trump? Unless President Kennedy was killed by shape-shifting, time-traveling aliens, I don't understand Trump's reasoning. Regardless, the fact remains that Kennedy and Trump agree the CIA was probably involved in the murder of President John F. Kennedy. When Kennedy was asked why the documents haven't been released under Obama, Trump, and Biden, Obama, Trump, and Biden. I think there's a comma needed there. Right. Well, there's always one. We did find one thing that needs to be adjusted. We need to add a comma. All right. Conclusion. Comma after Trump. And that is page 155 of the PDF. I knew we'd find one here. Kennedy responded, "The CIA doesn't want them to." Let me read the whole sentence again. When Kennedy was asked why the documents haven't been released under Obama, Trump, and Biden, Kennedy responded, "The CIA doesn't want them to." The last trough of documents proved Oswald was working with the CIA. The Warren Commission didn't know that during their investigation, according to Kennedy. Oswald had CIA connections going back to 1958, if not earlier. In the summer of 2024, President Trump was directly asked why he didn't release all the JFK files back in 2017 as he promised. "They would have preferred that I not release the rest of it," Trump answered. He never explained who they were. "So we did give quite a bit," Trump explained. "It's going to be done early on. A lot of people want to see that, and whatever it may say, I won't say. I sort of have an idea, but whatever it is, it'll be very interesting for people to see, and we're going to have to learn from it." What lessons will we learn? "My uncle was killed by a conspiracy," Kennedy said during a Fox News town hall on July 25th, 2024. "There's a law that requires that all of the records of John Kennedy's assassination be released to the public 10 years ago. They're still holding 5,000 documents. President Biden promised when he was elected that he was going to release those documents. President Trump promised that he would, but the CIA doesn't want them to. So, the question that I think Americans have a right to ask, including members of my father and uncle's family, is why not? What is it that you don't want us to see 60 years later? The last tranche of documents released had documentation in there that finally got even the New York Times to admit that Lee Harvey Oswald was a CIA asset, that he was working for the CIA. If the Warren Commission had known that back in 1964, they would have had a very different time. And the House Assassinations Committee never knew that. So I need to check my spelling on tranche. I think I spell it differently. Oh, trough. Okay, the last trough of document. And then here I put the last tranche of documents. Okay, I need to look at that. 155, 56. I think it's trough. Okay. 62 years after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in Dallas, Texas, the moment came when Kennedy and Trump vowed to work together to get our country back on track. With RFK Jr. by his side, President Trump made a big announcement about the remaining classified JFK files. "In honor of Bobby, I am announcing tonight that upon my election, I will establish a new independent presidential commission on assassination attempts, and they will be tasked with releasing all of the remaining documents pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy." I'm glad RFK Jr. will be involved in this process, but where are his siblings and cousins? Why is RFK Jr. the only one vocal about President Kennedy's death? The Kennedy family has unfinished business in Washington, D.C. President Trump is the most vocal president to ever talk about releasing all JFK files. 62 years after my uncle's death, none of the people who were implicated in that crime are alive now, Kennedy said during an interview with Tucker Carlson a few days after joining forces with President Trump. "The last ones have died off in the last year or two, so it clearly is to protect the institution, and that's wrong. I was disappointed when Secretary of State Mike Pompeo convinced President Trump to not release all the JFK files during his first term. Kennedy and Tucker Carlson discussed how that tragedy unfolded during their interview. Kennedy said that he was astonished that Trump didn't declassify them because he promised to during the campaign. Tucker Carlson quickly placed the blame on President Trump's Secretary of State. That was Mike Pompeo who did that, said Carlson. Kennedy agreed. Yeah, and I talked to President Trump for the first time about that this week. What did he say? Asked Carlson. He said that Mike Pompeo begged him, answered Kennedy. And I don't think that I'm telling tales out of school here. He said Mike Pompeo called him and said this would be a catastrophe to release these. You need to not do it. That kind of tells you the whole story right there, right? Carlson asked. Why would the CIA be trying to keep these files classified if they had nothing to do with the murder? I don't really get that. Trump better not make the same mistake this time around. I don't think I need that caps on the word and. All right, now we get into the executive order here. The executive order. The order has been signed. All will be revealed. The pen used to sign the order was then given to RFK Jr. It was the last executive order issued by President Trump on his third day in office. Save the best for last. This was a very special moment in American history. Give that to RFK Jr., President Trump. A few days prior to signing the order, President Trump held one final rally before entering the White House as the 47th President of the United States. During his speech, President Trump pledged to keep his promise of releasing all files related to President John F. Kennedy's death. As a first step towards restoring transparency and accountability to government, we will also reverse the overclassification of government documents. And in the coming days, we're going to make public remaining records related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, as well as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and other topics of great interest. I hope the events of September 11, 2001 are included in the other topics of great interest. Time will tell. It's all going to be released. On January 23, 2025, the executive order was signed in the Oval Office of the White House. That's a big one, Trump said as he signed the order. Trump continued. A lot of people are waiting for this for a long time, for years, for decades, and everything will be revealed. Trump turned to his aide, handed him the pen used to sign the order, and said, "Give that to RFK Jr." It almost made me cry. It's a moment I will never forget and will always be thankful for. The job was done. Everything that could be done to release the documents was now complete. Let the chips fall where they may. Later that same day, Kennedy was asked how he felt about the executive order. I think it's a great move because we need to have more transparency in our government, answered Kennedy. He's keeping his promise to have the government tell the truth to the American people about everything. There hadn't been much activity on Kennedy's social media account since Trump nominated him for HHS secretary. Kennedy posted a few family photos from Thanksgiving and Christmas, along with a few reposts after meeting with senators on Capitol Hill, but that was it. Then on January 24, 2025, Kennedy used his X account to respond to President Trump's executive order to release all files related to the deaths of President John F. Kennedy and Senator Robert Kennedy. In the order, President Trump took responsibility for not releasing all the JFK files in 2017 and 2018. According to the order, the President John F. Kennedy Assassination Record Collection Act of 1992 required all records related to the assassination of President Kennedy be publicly disclosed in full by October 26, 2017, unless the President certifies that I. Continued postponement is made necessary by an identifiable harm to the military defense, intelligence operations, law enforcement, or conduct of foreign relations, and the identifiable harm is of such gravity that it outweighs the public interest in disclosure. Which one of these two was the real reason President Trump did not release all the JFK files in 2017? We may never know for sure, but we know then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo asked Trump not to release everything. Still, the final decision was Trump's to make, and he is the one responsible for that failure. I previously accepted proposed redactions from executive departments and agencies in 2017 and 2018, President Trump wrote in the executive order, but ordered the continued reevaluation of those remaining redactions. Biden continued where Trump left off, allowing authorities to slow walk the release of the JFK files. That was all about to change. I have now determined that the continued redactions and withholding of information from records pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy is not consistent with the public interest, and the release of these records is long overdue. But Trump didn't stop there. Although the act of Congress directs the release of information pertaining to the assassinations of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I have determined that the release of all records in the federal government's possession pertaining to each of those assassinations is also in the public interest. That's a tongue twister. The order gives the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General 15 days from January 23rd to present a plan to the President for the full and complete release of records pertaining to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Authorities also have 45 days to do the same with records related to Senator Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. The next day, RFK Jr. thanked President Trump in a post on X. The 60-year strategy of lies and secrecy, disinformation, censorship, and defamation employed by intel officials to obscure and suppress troubling facts about JFK's assassination has provided the playbook for a series of subsequent crises. The MLK and RFK assassinations, Vietnam, 9/11, the Iraq War, and COVID that have each accelerated the subversion of our exemplary democracy by the military, medical, industrial complex, and pushed us further down the road towards totalitarianism. A government that withholds information is inherently fearful of its citizens' ability to make informed decisions and participate actively in democracy. Kennedy ended the post with appreciation towards his once presidential rival, the man he sued to protect the environment, and his future boss. Thank you, President Trump, for trusting American citizens and for taking the first step down the road towards reversing the disastrous trajectory. Two presidential candidates came together to expose the corruption of the New World Order, to fight for the health of our children's future, to close the decades-long conspiracy by the Warren Commission and its handlers, and to finally make America great again by making it healthy again. I think we need that making to be capitalized. Found more than we thought we would. All I have left to say is, God bless America, and all praise to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Remember, Jesus Christ loves you, and so do I. Of the increase of the kingdom of Christ, the scriptures say there shall be no end. This is an everlasting kingdom. All authority on heaven and earth, Jesus said, was given to him. And he has now commissioned us as his ambassadors from heaven to go into all the world and teach nations to obey what he's commanded, because it brings blessings to all people. It brings honor to God. And there's no plan of the devil or hell and the forces of darkness that can derail that 1 inch. We could talk lots more about this, but that's where the hope comes from. It's not from my book. It's not from a podcast. It's not from Elon Musk or Donald Trump or RFK. As much as we see God can use flawed people like us, our hope comes from the power of God working in the hearts of his people, and that doesn't stop and that doesn't end. Kirk Cameron. That's the end. That is the end of the book, my friends. We made it here in 33 minutes, and I'm so happy to have done it. And I do have a little more homework here, just a few more corrections that need to be made. I'm also going to put in, well, could be some commas, so could be a few commas here, commas there, comma chameleon. But we are now wrapped up with this, and I'm so happy to have done this and to have ended it with this particular shirt on. Probably noticed I wore a couple different shirts during this series here. 20 episodes, I think, is a good place to stop. But we will be coming back, and I will begin a new series, a new podcast series, just like this, going over my next book. And we're going to read through that, and you're going to help me with more edits and more typos and grammar problems. So I hope you join me for that. That book will be called, or not will be called, it is called Shadows of Light. And I am contemplating, because in light of everything that has happened to Charlie Kirk, and because I have not published that book yet, I may actually write one last chapter for that book about Charlie Kirk, because he is a shadow of light. Now we know the light is Jesus Christ, but we are all shadows of it. Think of it. Maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. It's an interesting book. Parts of it are actually taken from one of my very first books that I ever wrote that I abandoned or set aside, some things that got moved around. So a lot of it is rehashed stuff all put into one book, because I could never make sense of any of it. Solo wasn't enough. None of it was enough for a book by itself. So what you will notice in Shadows of Light is that every chapter really is its own book, talking about one on JFK, the Bohemian Grove, the Federal Reserve, Jesse Ventura, some things, the voter fraud 2020, some other things, September 11th, what are Kennedy and Trump's view on September 11th? And I think the Charlie Kirk little tribute, or a little something about Charlie Kirk, Kennedy, Trump, and Kirk Cameron all talking about Charlie Kirk, I think would be a great way to end that book there too, on a happy note. So I look forward to that. And just want to thank everybody. God bless you all. I will somehow, some way, be able to put this on Spotify too at some point. But it's been a very fun journey. And then after the Shadows of Light, the book that I will be working on editing next after that one will be The Invisible Enemy: The Early Days of COVID-19. Another book I've been putting off for years and years. Had most of that done in 2020. And you can see we're 5 years later. So timing is everything. God's planning is always correct. It's never wrong. His love never fails, and his guidance never fails either. We stay true to the Bible. We're going to fall, we're going to stumble, but we keep getting back up. We never lose faith in him. That will keep us safe. That will keep us grounded. He is our shield. He is our rock. He is our foundation. And if we make sure that he is our foundation, we will stand, because we stand for him. If we try to stand apart from him, that's where we always end up failing. And even when we stand for him and stand with him and try to stand for him, that's when the devil will come and try to do great harm. And the only thing that will help us during those dark days, during those troubled times, is the light of Jesus Christ. God bless you all. Remember, Jesus Christ loves you, and so do I. Till next time.